Good morning.
Good
Hey,
morning,
everyone.
everybody. Guess who's back?
It's
Back
Sandy.
again.
You had like a little reprieve there for about what, 3
2
weeks maybe?
weeks.
2 weeks?
Yes. I took a weekend off to move, and then another weekend last week to run the Pineapple Project 5K. So yay, we're back.
Yay.
We're
That's right.
back and we're ready to talk sheet, aren't we?
And you got a new background over
Holla.
there.
I do have a new background. So this morning I got up and I was productive and I rearranged. But guys, this
What?
morning I have my dear friend Carrie with me, also
Good
known
morning,
as
Carrie.
CPJ. And you might recognize her from our sister show, The Strange Connections, or from her super awesome boutique, Spoiled Cotton.
Boutique. I
Which
like that word.
I know. Why am I
We'll
not
have to
wearing
ask,
anything Spoiled Cotton?
we'll have to ask Trey to do like, boutique and cats or something like
Oh,
that.
that would be
Oh,
awesome,
funny.
right? That's funny. CPJ, welcome to Sandy Talk
Thanks.
Sheet. Tell us a
Thanks,
little bit
girl.
about you, what you do, and why you're a crime junkie.
Well, I am Carrie. I'm from Lubbock. I've been knowing Sandy for, girl, well over a decade now, huh? It's been
Yes.
a while, a long
It's
time.
been a while.
It has been a while. Excuse me. And yep, I'm just in the fit with Christmas with my boutique. About to get into it again when we get off here. But I'm sorry, as far as crime junkie stuff, I did not start getting into it until my show started the conspiracy theory stuff, and I was texting you, Sandy, what to watch? What do I watch? And then I was kind of like, ooh. So I texted her just a few weeks ago thinking, I can do this. I can do this show because I'm a scaredy cat. I don't venture off of Hallmark very often. And she gave me a perfect show to watch. In fact, I've watched it twice. I had to get my husband in on
Oh
it.
my gosh.
I know. So that's how I'm here. I am just dabbling my big toe into the crime junkie world. So here we go. I'm just starting off.
Well, I absolutely love it. I love that you are now, because it's really not that scary. What's
not.
scary is the things that they have done. Some of them have been caught, some of them have not. But
Right.
it's just so mind-blowing to me in a morbid sort of way. Just the things that people are capable of doing, and how they can live with themselves after they've done all these things. So it's just more, because it is sad, especially when there's
Yeah.
children involved and all that stuff.
Sure.
Super sad, but it's just crazy. So today's topic, Raquel, if y'all remember her from one of my previous shows, she sent me this link and she's like, have you heard about this? And so anyway, the reason it was on her radar was because this confession killer, Henry Lee Lucas, was tied to a local case here in Lubbock. And
Yes.
so anyway, we're going to talk about this because, guys, this is like, this is probably a 2-part show, but we're going to do it all in one. So, anyway, so it's a mini series on Netflix. It was it 5 episodes, Carrie?
5 episodes. That's right. Yep. And I think
Right,
each one were about 45 minutes. So
yes. So you
Definitely.
can totally binge watch it this evening,
Yeah.
and then you watch a Christmas movie, some Hallmark, something to eye bleach. But
Yeah.
guys, we got to cover a lot of ground. Carrie, you know the drill. Jump in, correct me. We're going to talk shit about this because this is mind blowing, guys. And
is.
I'm going to cover enough to spoil it, but not enough that you won't want to watch it, as per my usual that I always do. And remember, viewer discretion is advised. Little ears, okay? Because this is going to be deep,
Mhm.
okay? So we're talking about the confession killer, also known as Henry Lee Lucas, okay? So Henry Lee was born August the 23rd in 1963 in Blacksburg, Virginia. He was born to Viola and Anderson Lucas. He was her 9th child. 7 of the 9 Lucas children were in foster homes or with relatives. Okay, that's a lot of babies. Okay, and let's talk about his mom, because as you know, these moms are. I'm just going to go ahead and say they're a lot to blame. for the way these kids act. Okay, so let's talk about
Right.
his mom. Viola was abusive. These are all the ingredients that are going in to make what made Henry Lee Lucas. Abusive physically, emotionally. She regularly. Why do I have trouble saying that? That
Regularly.
reminds me of this show. That reminds me of this show that I used to watch. Anyway, she regularly humiliated Henry by having him dress as a girl and not wear shoes in the winter.
Having
Okay.
him dress as a girl, not wear shoes. Okay.
I mean, like she would like do his hair. He would have to walk to school barefoot. One time he went to school and his teacher took pity on him and she gave him shoes and he got beat when he got home for accepting his
Really?
charity. She was awful lady.
Yeah.
'Cause listen, and that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Hi, Priscilla. Good morning. Thanks
Morning,
for hopping
Priscilla.
on. I hope you're feeling better, Priscilla.
Yeah, no kidding. I was watching her posts.
I know.
Mm.
Okay, so Henry stated that his punishments were harsh, but not because of his misbehavior, but because he caused his mom inconveniences. Henry's father was the only one that showed him any kindness. His dad, sadly, was an alcoholic. His parents divorced, but because he didn't have any money, he was forced to live in the same house as Viola. So this is when I think the term "it's cheaper to keep her" probably it was invented with this, because he couldn't afford to move out, so he had to stay there. So yeah. Good morning, Anita. How are you this morning?
Hey, Anita. Welcome back.
Mhm.
So obviously they were crazy broke, and Viola was a sex worker.
Yes, she
Okay,
was.
so
She was
that's
a lady
wow.
of the night.
She was a lady. She was a ho
Hey.
ho ho.
Hey, now.
Did y'all hear Santa?
Let's hear those
No.
sleigh bells ringing.
There you go.
Santa comes out at night.
I mean, he does. Good morning, Minnie. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. So, okay, so she was a sex worker. Okay, you understand they're poor, but this I don't
Mhm.
understand. She would force Anderson, who's the ex-husband, and her son, Henry, to watch her have sex.
Yeah.
Say what?
Yes.
Yep.
So I'm feeling like every time I do one of these serial killers and these moms are the way, it's like we're escalating in cruelty. Okay.
Right.
Like I said before, I get that you turn tricks for money, but then you have to force your kid to watch you. He says that Henry said that one of his first memories was his mom making him watch, and he turned his back, and she was so mad that he turned his back that she beat him. And
Yeah.
y'all, I'm
And
not
it
even
was-
kidding, and I'll probably repeat this throughout the whole thing. Like, I honestly, this documentary made me feel so sorry for him.
Mhm.
In the
Yeah.
fact that all of this, more than likely, even if he had a low IQ, all of this could have been prevented had his mother been a better mother.
Right.
So anyway, so sadly, he not only suffered physical abuse from Viola, but from his brother as well. And you get it. I mean, if the brother is seeing it and the brother's a recipient, then you see why he's getting it too. So when he was 7 years old, he was playing in his backyard and his brother struck him with a knife, injuring his eye. And if you've seen Henry Lee Lucas, you do see that he is missing an eye. They do go in to describe how bad his eye was. And anyway, he was eventually fitted with a glass eye.
Right.
And
That's why
so
he's got that droopy, the
Mhm.
droopy eye. Mhm.
Yes. And so Viola refused to take him to the doctor. Henry was eventually fitted with a glass eye. And by age 10, he was most likely an alcoholic because Anderson, his dad, would give him alcohol as a treat.
Yeah.
So,
Well-
I mean, and that was his thing. I mean, there's just so many adults making bad choices around him and for him.
But isn't that
So-
the case for a lot sometimes back in the 60s? Well, 40s, 50s,
This was 60s, yeah, 60s.
60s?
60s,
Okay.
70s, 80s.
Yeah, that's when he was
Yeah,
on his
so-
killing spree.
Oh, okay. So then if he was a child by then, yeah, so then it probably was the 50s, 40s or 50s. So,
Yeah, I'm
Yikes.
sure his parents were coming out of the Depression era and all of that. I would
right.
think. Would you think,
What a
Sandy? They were of that
strange,
Good morning,
generation?
Brun.
what a strange environment or, mindset to put yourself into in that day and age. Like, obviously I can't comprehend it, but to see that that's some sort of option, and then to create, it's how it always goes for all these characters, Sandy, of yours,
Mhm.
is just the circumstances surrounding things. It's always like, how in the world, how does 1 + 1 = 2 in this family or this group of people? It's like, it's perplexing.
Well, I don't know about
Yeah,
you, Sandy, but I think one of the things that really struck me, and again, I'm brand new to this, so this
right.
may be something you've already thought about, but for me, I was impressioned, I guess. Impressed would not be a good word. I was impressioned at the fact that there was so much turbulence in Henry's early child rearing, and even as his adult life. Like, is social media that impactful in our world now that this would have gone on back then, unless they were like in the backwoods of the Smoky Mountains, right?
Well,
Or
go ahead. I'm interrupting.
or it's like it's wild to me that, I mean, neighbors were seeing behaviors, things were, it was all the teachers were seeing it, and now it's like there's a legal obligation if there's that kind of, if you see that, as an educator, I mean, you've got to turn that stuff in, and that's where I was
Okay.
like, whoa.
So I thought about that too. And
Okay.
then the modern day Gabriel Fernandez story. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Fernandez or Hernandez. The mom basically, not that was not aware that she did what she did as part of being a sex worker, but she burned her son. The son went to school. The thing is everybody around that child failed him. His family failed him. The educators failed him. The system, CPS failed him. And so, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, it's isolated now, but is it? Because Gabriel Fernandez is more recent in memory, and that's also on Netflix, and that's also a very hard watch. Okay. So yeah, write that down. It's a very hard watch. Definitely don't watch it with children. But I mean, it's the same instance in this. Mom is currently in prison. She's also being beat up in prison because of what she did to her child, but totally different story. So I mean, this made me think. I mean, he definitely had a messed up childhood. We can understand. And again, not just because you have a low IQ and because your parents beat you and because stuff like this, that you're going to be a serial killer. But this guy's, I mean, he was encouraged. He didn't have any good examples from his parents. No love, no nurturing, no affection, no attention. He was encouraged to drink. And this is all while his brain is forming. I mean, our kids now I feel like are uber sensitive. Like, I don't think that they would have, I don't know. I say that they wouldn't have allowed this, but I don't know.
One of the things I watched on that is that, sorry if I'm interrupting.
No, you're not.
That they did a scan of his brain, I guess, post-mortem, and there was so much damage to the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe. And Jaime, maybe you can speak on this, but evidently those are the two spots of the brain that really influence your critical thinking, your reactive thinking, your how you're going to react to things, your emotional system, all of those things. And so on top of that, plus I think his IQ was tested at 85.
87.
Or 87. Okay. So that, and I don't know how the IQ system is tested, but the damage that the actual physical damage to his brain from the beatings, how that impacted. And it said that, a lot of serial killers, it's interesting that most of them have a ER history because of trauma to the brain.
Mm-hmm. And so we're going to introduce a character here in just a second, which had the similar issues. But they think at 8 years old, Viola struck Henry repeatedly over the head with a 2x4.
Yeah.
And so he lay unconscious 30 to 36 hours, and it's believed that he was in a coma for these 3 days. And so they did finally seek medical attention, but by then the damage was done. It was thought that after this incident, his mental development was severely hindered for the rest of his life. So yes, his IQ was 87, and I wanted to see, because I was kind of like you, like, how do you do for like, how does an 87 fit in? So just kind of for reference, it falls in the category of low average intelligence, and low average intelligence ranges from 80 to 89. So if you or your child has scored an 87 on an IQ test, it shouldn't upset you very much, because the level of intelligence can be raised up to 20 points through efforts and patience. So obviously, like I said, it doesn't hinder you because you can still build
he's
up to it.
He's very functioning.
So, and this is my soapbox real quick. Henry's childhood makes me question every single adult in his life, teachers and doctors. All but 2 kids were in foster care. They put his eye out. He wasn't wearing shoes to school. His traumatic brain injury. Like, why were the others removed and why was he not removed?
Right.
You know, and so just like I said, just in reading his childhood, it makes me so sad for him.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's countless other children that have gone through the same thing. Like I said, it's on that one Netflix special. But man, y'all, I just can't help but feel sorry. And of course, I also feel sorry for all the victims of him, that were his victims. But as a child, I can't figure out and understand why a mom would do that to their child, or anybody would do that to a child.
I feel like it's definitely a case where it would make sense for him to sit on Oprah's couch and go, well, it was because of my parents. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. In this instance, you can totally blame your parents. Like if you're mad at your parents for whatever reason, I don't feel like it would, I don't know. It's just not enough. So, let's get into more about Henry. So to add to Henry's situation, because this, we've already got a pot boiling. To add more to his situation, his father lost his legs after passing out drunk on a railroad track.
Oh my gosh.
His new alias, get this, for Anderson is No Legs.
I knew that.
But
that's original.
He was bound to this makeshift wheelchair and some sort of mat. And 3 years after the train incident, he was fighting with Viola, and he wheeled himself outside. He was drunk and exhausted, and he never woke up. Henry lost the only person that ever really cared for him.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just compile to the already severely traumatized Henry.
Yes.
So Henry, according to Henry, his sexual appetite developed at an early age. He stated that he hunted animals and had sex with their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to note that he was taught this. He was taught this by, I believe, one of Mom's boyfriends.
Mm-hmm.
One of Mom's live-ins.
Yes.
And so this is something that this lovely person, sicko, taught him. Okay.
Yeah. And taught him to have emotions. It was literally just in, get out.
Mm-hmm. My gosh. So then he runs away from home at 14 years old with only an 8th grade education. He starts to steal to make money. He ends up in Beaumont Training School for boys. Basically, that's just another fancy word for juvie. Yeah. He ends up in juvie. Okay. And he was sent there for larceny, and he was released less than a year later. After his release, he raped his 12-year-old niece, and he was also facing time for burglary. So obviously, Henry is not making good choices. And again, I can still see why. Okay. Yeah. So he goes to prison. And after 6 years in prison, he's released to no real home. Mm-hmm. He only knew that he wanted to stay away from his mom. And he went to stay with his half-sister in Michigan. I believe her name was Opal. So it's in Michigan that he meets Stella, his first true love, according to him. Yeah. His happiness was short-lived because shortly after, Viola arrives in Michigan and demands that he returns back to Virginia without Stella. Viola returns back to her daughter's apartment. Several hours later, Henry's been drinking and he's ready to finish this argument. He states that he was trying to reason with Viola, and she hit him with a broomstick. And he remembers slapping her on her neck and realizing that he had his knife in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So
she hit him with a broomstick and he hit her with a knife.
Mm-hmm. Don't bring a broomstick to a knife fight.
That's right.
So many options, Jamie. Yeah. So Henry leaves Opal's apartment and he drives back to Virginia. And this is what's crazy. So he actually has like an attack of conscience because he starts to head back to Michigan because he starts worrying about his mom. And this is where I always see like these kids, regardless of the circumstances, they still have some sort of love for their mom. So he heads back.
Still some empathy there.
Yeah, and he gets arrested in Ohio and on charges of second-degree murder. He's sentenced to 20 to 40 years in state prison. So this is his first confirmed kill. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So in this time, Lucas had 2 suicidal attempts while he's in prison because he says he keeps hearing his mom's voice. I feel like maybe that's a conscience thing too. He goes to the mental state hospital. He's administered shock therapy. And he's sent back to prison after 5 years, but just 10 years after his sentence, he's released from prison due to overcrowding. So there we have it. Had he not been released, we wouldn't have the confession killer on our hands. So Lucas claims that he killed 2 girls on the day that he was released, but no bodies were ever found to corroborate his story.
He confessed that he killed 2 girls on the day that he leaves?
The day that he's released.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
But we're going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
we're gonna get to all of that. Hopefully, we're gonna get to unpack all this mess. So let's bring in the movie they call him Otis. Mm-hmm. I feel like his name is Otis, but we're just gonna call him Otis. Yeah, I like Otis better, but we're just gonna call him Otis to keep with the confession theme.
Okay.
So let's cue Otis Toole. And Otis, let's go a little bit into his background. He had a troubled childhood like Henry Lee Lucas. His father deserted the family. Mother was reported to be cruel and possessed strict religious views. I've had a few strict religious views. Henry Holmes and, dang it, my other one just, Ed Gein, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah. So Otis committed his first murder at the age of 14 when he was picked up by a traveling salesman and was forced to have sex with the traveling salesman. Toole said he ran him over with his own car. Toole was classified as developmentally disabled. It's also important to note that Toole suffered a traumatic brain injury that would cause seizures the rest of his life. His traumatic brain injury as he fell and impaled a nail deep into his head, and that would cause him epileptic seizures the rest of his life. So these guys
looked like cousins, didn't they?
Right, because these guys became kissing cousins. Okay, so Henry and Otis, they met in 1978, and they met in a soup kitchen, and they began a friendship and also a sexual relationship. Otis invited Henry to live with him, and Otis lived with his mom, her husband, Toole's wife, because he was married, and his niece Becky Powell, and a nephew. And it said that immediately Henry took interest in Becky Powell. And guys, that wasn't even her name. He just named her Becky. Yeah. Her name was like Frida something or other. Yeah. So they say that there's going to begin some grooming by Henry Lee Lucas towards Becky. Okay, so now let's get to the confession killer. That's all of Henry's sad, unfortunate background. Yeah. So Lucas confesses to killing 100. Oh, no, scratch that. 150. No, wait. 360. Oh, no, wait.
Oh, no.
3,000. He confesses to killing 3,000 people.
But I think my favorite part was, okay, the judge going, yeah, you're guilty for what was it, 1 or 2? And he stands up and says, but what about all the other ones? And the judge is like, I mean, hallelujah, here come the heavens. It's the best day in the world for the legal system. He's just like, blah, 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 here you go.
He is vomiting confessions left and right. So the Texas Rangers are going to play a part in this. They usually work high-profile cases, and they're also put in the area to be a benefit to the local, sometimes understaffed police departments. So Henry's first murder victim was his mother, and he was 23 years old. And after his release in 1970, he was arrested twice for attempted kidnapping of 2 young girls, and then for stealing a relative's truck. Okay. So Lucas was never charged for several crimes. In one instance, Lucas sexually abused his two stepdaughters over the course of his marriage to Betty Crawford. The girls finally told their mother, and she divorced him. I don't remember if they actually said anything about if he got charged on that. I don't think that he did. I don't think that she went to the authorities. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lucas claimed that he took Becky. These are one of the very first confessions, that he took Becky and her brother, which is Toole's niece and nephew, to Dade County, Florida, and made them watch Toole and Toole and Henry murder 19-year-old Hazel and 17-year-old Linda. Those bodies were found bound and gagged in a marsh. But here's the kicker. Upon reviewing school records, Becky and Frank were in school. So did he take them? Did he not take them? Did he falsely confess? Or did he get the dates wrong? Now this is going to be clear as mud here in just a second, because that's how I was left feeling.
Uh-huh. So we're at the end of season 1 or episode 1 when we're like, he did it. And now we're about to go.
Right. Wait a second. Did he? So in all of this, Toole's mama dies. The kids, the niece and nephew, go back to their mom, and she had like some weird name, like Juicifla. I can't even remember. It was some weird name. So she's
the reason why we got Juicy on the back of pants.
Yes, exactly. Probably. So she tries to clean up her act. She's a drug addict, and she unfortunately dies. The kids, Becky and the brother, end up in foster care. But Toole and Lucas bust them out, and they set cross country, and they take them out of the children's home of whatever that is. I mean, I'm just so confused. I know Jamie is. So in 1982, Lucas abandons Otis and he goes to Florida with Becky. So remember, he's been grooming Becky. Becky is now like his little 15-year-old wife.
Yeah.
And Otis, in the meantime, is pissed that Henry's abandoned him. So he's out there just killing people. He's on a murder spree himself. He would be arrested a year later. So Henry and Becky are hitchhiking, and the Smart family take pity on them and don't realize that Becky's only 15. They assume they're a married couple. So they let them stay and live and work with the Smarts and do odd jobs. The Smarts connect them with Kate Ridge back in Texas, because Becky starts saying she's homesick or something to that effect. I don't know. It's a lot of crap. So they decide, okay, we're going to go back out on the farm and help Kate. And so it works out. They do little odd jobs for Kate. Kate and Becky are getting kind of close, and Henry becomes jealous. Okay. It's not a good thing to upset Henry.
Right.
So anyway, Becky starts going to Kate's church. And so she's starting to kind of realize, like, hey, Henry's not a good guy. Henry's a bad guy. She attempts to run away, but Henry brutally murders her.
Mm-hmm.
So he finally kills Becky. To avoid suspicion, he tells the pastor that Becky ran off with the truck driver. And most everyone believes the story. Most everyone but Kate Ridge, her best friend. She would hound him constantly and ask him where she was.
That best friend again, remember? You guys, you need a best friend in your life.
Get you a best friend.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, because that was a good PSA there. She would constantly ask him where he's at, and he grew tired of it. So one day, and this is really weird why Kate Ridge did this. Maybe she thought she was going to get some answers. He's like, hey, let me take you to church. And
I heard
she's
a song
like,
about that once.
Right? Oh, there is a song.
Mm-hmm.
I take you. Okay, let me focus. So anyway, they never make it to church. He actually brutally murders her in Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Dead serious, yeah. I mean, dead serious, no pun intended. Her family calls the police because they know Henry Lee Lucas lived with her. So anyway, he flees to California, then to Missouri. This whole time, I'm like, how much can you steal to drive that much? How much was gas back in the day?
Yeah.
You know, those clunkers only got like 2
cents.
a gallon.
He wasn't filling out W-2s. So, I mean, how was he getting paid?
But you guys, it was a different time too. People were more generous back then. You could get away with handshakes and promises.
Murder.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, we're not even in the 80s yet. I think, right?
He's like looking like the dirty toothless wonder. So I don't know how much trust is being given.
He did have 4 teeth. He did. I bet his mom knocked the rest of them out. It doesn't say that in the story. I'm just making
smoking made him fall out.
Oh, that too. He was a chain smoker. Okay, let's go back. So he stupidly calls the pastor and asks for his job back after he's fleeing and done killed everybody. So the pastor alerts the police that Lucas is headed back and he's arrested. He fails the polygraph, but it's not enough to keep him. When he's released, the pastor tells him, hey, Lucas gave me a gun to hold. So they use that as a tactic to lure him back. In the meantime, he's picked up Kate's pieces because he hacks her up and puts her in a pillowcase, I believe. And he burns them and he spreads her ashes to destroy the evidence.
My gosh.
I mean, he's busy. He's a busy man. Mm-hmm. So the Rangers, cue the Texas Rangers. They are brought in to assist in looking for an 82-year-old missing Kate Ridge. In June of 83, he's arrested. And they find her purse while they're investigating. And then they also realize when they're investigating that Becky Powell, who is Frida Lorraine Powell, is also missing. So, I know, right, Grant?
It's just too good of a story. And when you have kids who are just sweet, you're kind of like, I was like, I don't need it. And she's like, I was like, just give it to me.
Right, you're right. I do need it.
Pickle and a soda
right.
too.
So he's arrested, and to get a confession, you know what they do?
Tickle his feet.
Close. They withhold his coffee and his cigarettes. And in just 4 days, he starts singing like a bird, okay?
Give him strawberry milkshakes.
Are you serious?
Oh, dead serious. He admits to killing Kate and Becky, and then he starts confessing to murders like Lisa, Kevin Kay, Rita Salazar. Mm-hmm. And he claims that he... Yeah. I mean, you name it. Oh, that one, I did it too. Oh, that one in Lubbock, I did it too.
Oh, you're going to give me a strawberry milkshake? Okay, I did that one and that one.
So you're promising me for every confession, I'm going to get 1 strawberry milkshake? In 1 day, he confesses to 6. So he's up to a total of 6 strawberry milkshakes in 1 day. Yeah. So anyway, he claims that he started confessing after the officers offered him cigarettes, hamburgers, and even steak. So let's roll back. Okay. So you're telling me that Henry Lee Lucas, with an IQ of 87, committed all these murders, was smart enough to never leave a strand of evidence, no DNA, nothing. Of course, they didn't have DNA back then.
Yeah, but yeah.
So he might have left DNA, right?
Oh, he did. More on that later.
He left DNA.
More on that later.
We're going to circle back to that. Let's pin it. Let's put a pin in it. We'll come back.
Yep.
So anyway, Henry was receiving attention that he had never received before in his life. He was loving his infamy, his notoriety. People, even after he went to prison, he kept confessing. He and Otis had prison conversations that were recorded, and they talked about how many murders they'd each committed. They were just back and forth in these phone calls. Oh, I did 150. Oh, I did 250. You know, they were one up.
Just having pissing contests in prison.
It was a pissing contest for sure.
Yeah, because it was giving them the attention and this. They almost felt like they were being worshipped and loved.
Yes, because if I'm getting cigarettes, if I'm getting coffee and strawberry milkshakes and hamburgers, I mean, everybody loves me, right?
He's getting all these reporters from all over the country coming in, and didn't he call his? Basically, where they were interrogating him, that was his office in his mind. That was his office.
Whenever people would come and investigate, he's like, "Yeah, this is my office." Okay, so and in this documentary, guys, he's not even in handcuffs. A notorious serial killer is not in handcuffs.
Yes, and on that, it's a serial killer that has confessed to, and I think that this is important to know in the way of a serial killer, because typically they have a pattern, right? His was gagging, strangulation, cutting, shooting. I mean, it was just all over the place, which is very untraditional for a serial killer. Right. And so they were allowing his hair to be cut. They were allowing him to shake hands, cut his steaks, all this different stuff with what he had said at one point that he was killing people with. And he's just, the way I'm free in my house right now is the way he was free in his office.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even when he'd go out to the murder sites to show him what he had done, where he had done, what they could find, it was just unshackled.
Yeah, he could have run off if he wanted.
Yeah. So
but then he wouldn't get his free milkshakes, like you said.
Yeah, so it's not worth running off for, right?
Yeah.
So they have this
What year is this, by the way? Or years?
You would ask me. It was 84, 83, 84.
That helps give me context to the state of things and other stuff.
To where we're at as far as our justice system.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to tell you this right now. Lucas was only linked to 3 murders.
Yeah.
His mama, Becky Powell, and Kate Rich.
Yeah.
We talked about these characters. It's a far cry from the 3,000 that he confesses to, okay? So they bring in this task force to put together to verify his stories, to verify everything. And all sheriff departments were allowed to come in and question. 1,000 officers signed in to talk to him. 1,000 officers.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. It was a freaking circus.
I know where this is going now.
They show a calendar of all of his appointments that he has.
Yeah.
And they were like, sometimes they were double booked. Sometimes, some they could only have like an hour. Some of them would be in there up to 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about Hugh Ainsworth, who's an author who had previously written a book about Bundy. He was invited to interview. Oh, that's another one. Mm-hmm. He was invited to talk to Henry. And he said he had great access to Henry. He said his first impression, he said he had a horrible smell. He was a pitiful looking man. Hugh also brought in a Japanese film crew. And Sheriff Boutwell was thrilled to have him there. Hugh felt like Henry's confessions, this is Hugh talking in this interview in this movie. He felt like Henry's confessions were out of the norm as he'd interviewed murderers before. He did say that Henry told him, I didn't really commit all those murders. I'm just making things up. He had total access for 6 months with Henry. Carrie, what were you going to say?
Okay. So, they talk about his IQ being 85 or 87, I'm sorry. But his memory was as if you just put a piece of paper in front of him and then all of a sudden he could dot every I and cross every T. But with that said, so I'm going to say that. So you think, oh, he's got this photographic memory. You could definitely land on that side of the fence, right? Well, then he looks at this Japanese crew, and mind you, as Sandy said, he's gone back and forth across the United States, evidently, on this killing spree. He tells the Japanese crew, I've driven to your state. You can hear him say that. So it's like, that wasn't coached.
Right. He's like, oh yeah, I've driven there. I've killed somebody there too.
Yeah, I drove.
He's like, how'd you get there? He's like, I drove. So you're just kind of like, oh, poor Henry.
And then we go.
So
poor Henry.
There's something interesting in that, right? You talked about earlier, he getting hurt into his temporal lobe and his frontal lobe.
Mm-hmm.
And just now, talking about his IQ being low and his ability to recall.
Yes.
So just to help everyone just kind of a little bit again with biology, physiology, and stuff like that. So when we're children, we think primarily with our amygdala. puberty hits in, and then that amygdala gets engorged, and so that's why we're very emotional teens and kids, and then our brain stops developing at the age of 25, 26, and at
Mine's
that
still being
point,
engorged because I'm still very emotional.
Yeah, right.
at that point, your body goes through the process of switching over decision making. It hands over decision making to the frontal lobe, and so the frontal lobe is what helps us distinguish wrong from right, how to make those decisions. Okay, now the frontal lobe sits right next to the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is responsible for memory. So the fact that he has a below level intelligence, I mean, that's okay. That happens, right? Serial
Right.
killers actually traditionally have higher IQs. They're either at mid-range IQs or high-level IQs, not in the low level. And so the fact that he can recall stuff pretty well like that, if that's what
It's
I heard
working
you
pretty
say,
well. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It is
that's
like
so weird.
it-
Then, especially if he had damage to
Yeah.
his temporal lobe.
it's like a
Because-
magic trick. His memory.
Yeah.
Interesting. Although that doesn't say much because the brain is a strange thing. You know, there's people who've been in comas for decades, and then they wake up, and all of a sudden they're savants. All of a sudden, you know,
Or they speak different languages.
Yeah.
and other things. They can play musical instruments that they never had before with, you know, a certain acuity that just is unparalleled to anyone. They can recite things. They can, you know, photographic memories and stuff. So it's very strange. The brain is obviously strange, but I think it's odd that those things that we talked about, you're talking about, Carrie, and then all of a sudden this guy, you know, there's some definitely some meticulous, I'm playing you guys. You know, he knows how to play poker very well kind of situation.
So, Sandy, I think this would be a really good shift into talking about the woman from Dallas detective, what they did to
Yes.
him
So here's what happens.
to check his
So
memory.
this detective in Dallas is like the number one woman solving. I mean, she was amazing. So she's like not believing that he's done all these crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know what she does? She tells her captain or whatever it is, her the ranking above her, I'm going to put together a false murder.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not telling the Texas Rangers that. And she's uber nervous about this. Like, she's like, I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to. So she puts together this whole case and goes in to interview Henry. And Henry says, yeah, I did that.
Because she left him with the evidence there for a little bit and enough time for him to read it.
And in the interviews, you can kind of see that they lead him into these things as well. So she puts it out there, puts a fake picture, kind of does, and he tells her exactly what he did on this bogus murder.
And I remember that necklace that she had on. I remember. Yeah.
And he sits there and gives her all of these details, and it never happened. Say that again.
So he could have his case of Pall Mall cigarettes.
Yeah. And this never happened. Yeah. And so this is just kind of blowing Boutwell's case out of the water, the Texas Rangers and everything else that he's confessing to. This also fuses into what Hugh Ainsworth has believed this whole time. Henry didn't do any of this. Henry is just saying this so that he can keep getting his treats. So here you have all of these police departments closing all these cases. You have women, families that have been advocating for their loved ones, creating groups for Henry Lee Lucas to die, and what was it? It was lethal injection. I couldn't even think of the word, because he's killed their loved ones.
Yeah.
But he really, truly hasn't killed anybody. And I don't even know at what point this DA gets involved. This up and coming young DA out of McLennan County. And he's
what was
because
that?
I don't think that he was originally, because the Orange Sox was
it Orange Sox that he got involved in?
Yes, I think so. So this up and coming young DA decides to also figure out if Henry Lee Lucas is in fact telling the truth. So guys, they start pinning. So this is a case file. So they have this case file. They also have this case file. This murder and this murder that he's confessed to are 600, even up to 2,000 miles apart. But yet he said, yeah, I did this and then I drove on out to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were like, logistically, it is not possible for him to have been able to do that.
Mm-mm.
So he starts, a lot of all these confessions that he's doing, they're putting them on a map and they have pins everywhere. And all these cases are being closed. Henry Lee Lucas did it. Henry Lee Lucas did it.
Yeah.
So this DA goes against the Texas Rangers, goes against these sheriffs.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, this DA has landed himself in hot water.
Oh, yeah.
He has gone against the FBI. Was it the FBI?
Uh-huh.
Somebody way up there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this DA is being indicted
Mm-hmm.
and potentially facing 80 years in prison. And he's on there and he's like, this is more than any of my people, more time than any of my people ever spent in jail. This is how much time I'm facing.
Yeah, the people that he had
People
fought
that
up
he
against
sent
for
to jail.
murder. Yeah, murder.
Yeah. And so the reason being is like he's gone, they're saying that he's accepting bribes from people for his campaign because he eventually wanted to be big in the political world. Like, yeah, he's taken this by storm, but when he did this, he did everything wrong. And so his house gets, like you see the raids, FBI comes in and raids stuff. They go so far as to raid his daughter's little veterinarian bag and pull out a fake syringe and say, oh, this is evidence drug paraphernalia.
Yep.
And they have all of these attorneys and stuff that he's friends with say that he has been accepting money from them. And these guys are like, we never took any of his money. Y'all, I told Eric, I said, I've always thought you always put law enforcement in a higher regard.
Right.
I've always thought Mexico was uber corrupt when it comes to their law enforcement, just because you can pay them off, give them a 20, give them a niner, and then they'll leave you alone. But I felt like in this instance, and Sheriff Boutwell is deceased, and so he couldn't come on and tell anybody of his side of the story and why he did all this. But man, it just leaves you questioning life. Like I question life.
What was his name?
Sheriff Boutwell.
That's
Yeah,
what it was?
he was like
The DA's. I can't think of the DA's name right now. That would have been important to write down.
I think that the woman out of Dallas said it right. She said, I really don't like to speak poorly of my other brothers in uniform.
Right.
But
Fiesel.
unfortunately, there are some that want to close case so bad that it's not even low-hanging fruit. It's like somebody like a Henry Lee Lucas just walks in and you're like, hey, we can just pin 3,000 murders, even though like that just doesn't even make sense. And can pin on him because he's going to take this milkshake and Pall Malls and close all this. And therefore my political gain is through the roof.
Right.
I don't believe that our men and women in uniform all are that way. But
No.
Girl, you could walk into a retail store of 3 people and somebody's going to be poisoned.
Right. Right. And that's the thing is, it's everywhere. And
It's everywhere.
And yes, he had a lot of pressure to close all these cases. Yeah. And so I feel like that's what motivated him to, and also too, Henry was willing to confess to all of these things. So, I mean, if you're willing and ready, I mean, why not? Right.
Right.
So anyway, so this DA,
he was found not guilty, by the way.
Oh yeah, he was found not guilty. I mean, and he won the biggest lawsuit that is currently in the Guinness Book of Records because of how big it was that he won. I mean,
I
he
think
lost.
Wasn't he the one that he's the one that, or it may have been the Ainsworth guy that maybe they were working together. I'm not really sure. But it was something where they were able to say, because he was, Lucas was about to get the murder actually going to send him to death. That was going to be
Right,
the
right.
one that was missing in the
Oh,
death, which I think was orange
yeah.
socks.
He was the reason for the commute. So they
Yes.
commuted the death penalty for Lucas and
Yeah.
the only life in prison.
Yeah, and that it was amazing
So
because they were able to see him clocking in and clocking out at work in a different state. And so they brought all that to life, going, his employee records are right here. His clocking in and clocking out signature is right here. There's no way that this murder was over here at this particular.
so he was representing Lucas.
Right.
I
At
didn't
one
get
point,
that.
Vic Diesel was representing Lucas. At
Okay.
one point, he was, but then
I
Lucas
was
did
like,
him
why
dirty.
is he getting all this? I thought you were saying he found all these inconsistencies and reported that, but he
Right.
was representing
Right.
Lucas,
in the
Right.
and
beginning.
that's why.
And then he ended up quitting because doing that. But there's another DA that got in Governor Bush's ear and said, "Hey, man, we're fixing to fry a guy that's not guilty," which is why eventually Bush deferred, took him off of death row. And in the meantime, guys, I'm telling y'all, this is so dang hairy. So all of these women are finding out that Henry, in fact, didn't kill their loved ones.
Yeah.
And in some instances, like they were doing DNA testing, and they show a guy getting caught in the case because he confessed to if y'all remember, I said the name Rita Salazar. He confessed to that. Thank you, Shauna. Yes, Vic Fiesel. And all the evidence that they had for her was preserved. So in 2008, they did a DNA test, and it wasn't Henry Lee Lucas.
No,
It was Benny Tijerina.
Benny.
Benny's DNA was found in her underwear. So they show his they bring him in, they're going to question him, and he's like, "I don't know how my semen got in her underwear.
Gotta watch out for that underwear, people.
That semen
Yeah,
just
they
be
get to
flying out everywhere."
Everywhere,
Just be landing in, that's always been a concern of mine, that semen would be found.
right.
My semen would be found in somebody else's underwear.
Concern of mine. Big concern.
Yeah. Always worried about that.
That's not mine, officer. I don't know what you're talking about. Mine's right here.
Someone stole that and planted it.
Yes. So anyway,
I've been looking for those.
Oh my gosh.
Where did you find them?
so in
Sorry.
another murder that's also part of these victims, these women that bonded together over being victims of Henry Lee Lucas.
Sure, support groups.
Henry tells the victim that confesses, "Oh yeah, she was wearing this watch bracelet," and the victim's daughter says, "Well, I remember my dad and I told the police that she was wearing this watch bracelet, but in fact, they went through her jewelry box and she didn't wear it that day that she was murdered." So how is it that Henry would know that she was wearing a watch bracelet?
Because he was watching her.
Exactly. Are watch bracelets still a thing?
I don't know.
I don't know. I remember watch bracelets though. Anyway, is that a watch bracelet? Yeah. I can talk to my bracelet. So anyway, guys, the Texas Rangers credited Henry Lee Lucas with approximately 200 murders. Okay. DNA tests never linked him to any of those murders. In 20 of those cases, the real killers have been identified. The majority of his cases have never been re-examined, including the one in Lubbock, Texas. So they dedicated this show to her at the end because she has since passed.
Lubbock, Texas?
Lubbock, Texas? Yeah. This mama passed not ever knowing what happened to her daughter.
That pisses me off.
So what's kind of upsetting is, so I've never been in this situation, but I'm assuming because this is kind of what they talked about. These victims said, they looked at all the case files and everything sounded right. Well, when they went back and either read the case files or heard his confessions, they were like, well, that actually doesn't make sense. Yeah. The one in Lubbock said he broke in through a window, but she said, well, there was a curio cabinet there that was way too heavy for him to have been able to move it on his own.
Right. So
originally they were on board that he had done it, but then after hearing that, they realized he couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And so there was so many of these, like I said, so many of these cases Orange Socks was identified in 2019 as Deborah Jackson. And he confessed to killing Orange Socks, and he told him how he had killed Orange Socks. They conveniently put a thumb over her picture, and he's like, oh yeah, strangulation or something like that. And her killer still remains at large.
Yep.
So, like I said earlier, Henry Lee Lucas was only ever murdered 3 people. And it's just mind-blowing that, I mean, we had so many numbers thrown out. It's freaking lottery numbers almost, but Powerball or something. But yeah, 3,000. 3,000 was what he confessed to. And there was at one point, and this is kind of what threw me off. I guess him and some lady were corresponding and trying to say like she was still Becky Powell. Can you clarify that? Because I was like,
yes. This woman was one of these women that falls in love with an inmate.
All the wrong people.
Yes.
and all the wrong people.
She wants to be in love with him and wants to be his wife type of situation. And so he, through mail correspondence, through postal service, says to her, have you ever been fingerprinted? This is how we could get away with this charge if you could come forward and say that you are indeed Becky Powell, that they have this wrong. And she's like, no, I've never been fingerprinted. So he's thinking in his mind, then there's no way they could prove this or disprove this. And but as soon as they, I guess, cornered her and made her, they believed it. I think this is what made that DA finally come off.
This is why Vic left, because of this little plot right here.
Right. Because he would have gotten off anyway. We didn't need this side twist.
Surface.
Yeah, we didn't need it. And so he tells her, you're good for perjury if you don't come through and tell the truth. And so that's when she's like, well. And so she's on, 2020 or Dateline or whatever, and saying, I did this because I was in love. I did this
Jerry
because...
Springer.
Yeah.
Mari
Waffles.
Lisa, what's her name?
So it wasn't her.
Ricky
It wasn't her. But he got her saying details that, basically was able to talk about how many studs were in the house. That's how detailed he got her story to be, which is just like the details of all his confessions were so detailed that he knew how much pepper was in the pepper shaker.
Yeah. Like, this is my confession.
The truck driver that she married, she ended up marrying the truck driver, because that's what he originally had said. She ran off with the truck driver. Well, then, he ended up getting the truck driver to say, oh, yeah, I'm the truck driver. We got married.
Yeah.
So anyway, the DA after this, because he thought he had a nail in the coffin. He thought he was fixing to get him off.
One nail in the head, huh?
Mm-hmm. That's oddest. Yeah. So he quit after this. And Henry is very emotional. He's very emotional behind the scenes of all this when they're recording him. Oh my gosh, I forgot to tell y'all.
What?
So I told my friend that I was doing this show.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, she's going to kill me for even mentioning it, but she actually had a run-in with Henry Lee Lucas while she was working.
I'm like, I interview her. What's her name?
Friends. She will kill me. She's like, do not. And so I'm going to go ahead and tell
you. Her name is Sarah, and she lives at 512.
But anyway, he said that he was like, okay, so apparently people on death row can't have their phones out, can't use the phone after 4:00. And so anyway, he was like demanding that he get to use it. And he was like, well, I'm going to have your job. And she's like, well, actually, felons don't qualify for my job. Anyway, he wrote up a grievance against her, blah, blah, blah. But anyway.
Oh, I think it's important to note, too, you were talking about his religious beliefs. So remember, he got in with the chaplain of the, I believe, Clemmy. And he and Clemmy are the ones that had that, I don't want to say intimate relationship, but they had a friendship. It was seems like
she was a spiritual advisor.
Yes, it seems like the healthiest human interaction relationship he ever had in his entire life, because just like we mentioned earlier, the authority figures in his child rearing age all failed him. And now we've got the Texas Rangers, the DA, the CIA, the President of the United States, whoever, all failing him. by allowing him to get milkshakes and cigarettes for all these confessions. I'm not saying
So
he
you're
didn't
saying
murder
that
people, but he didn't murder
his
3,000
milkshake
people.
brought a lot of people to him.
His milkshake brought
His
all the people
milkshake
to the
brought
jail
people to the
yard.
yard.
Just checking.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, so I didn't even touch on Clemmy. So Clemmy was a jailhouse minister, and she took a liking to him. So he hated all women until he met Clemmy. She baptized him and helped him to know God. So he felt like God sent Clemmy. And he also said that God encouraged him to confess and also helped him remember where all the bodies were located.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
He also did say
Amen.
that Sheriff Boutwell had a very good relationship, and he felt like Boutwell was his dad.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why he could not let Boutwell down, and this is why he couldn't tell him no when it came to confessing to cases.
Yeah. So his heartstrings, kind of the way we all have heartstrings toward our parents or grandparents, people who loved us, the biggest loves of our lives. That was Clemmy and Boutwell to him in his adult life. That's the way I understood it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because they were the ones rewarding him with affection, with all the rewards that he never got as a child. He was receiving.
He thought he was getting positive attention, and I think Clemmy probably was giving him a positive attention.
Oh,
I think
for sure.
It came across in that documentary that she was the one that was probably had his best interest at heart and had a healthy concern for him.
She had his spirit in mind.
Yeah, she did. I mean, she even talked about like when he died and something about she heard like
All the angels
sing and stuff. I mean, she had like she was really, really trying to save his soul. She really was.
Mm-hmm.
Where's she at today, I wonder?
I don't know. She was in the documentary. She was in the documentary like when she first met him, and then they're
what was her name? Minnie?
Clemmy.
Clementine.
But anyway, guys, so this concludes our talking sheet about Henry Lee Lucas. CPJ, you've been amazing. I'm so glad you finally crossed over to the morbid side of life.
Yes, girl, yes.
So, what you also need to watch
out there that's kind of wanting to toe the line on it, y'all. If you are anything like me in the sense that you can separate yourself from the emotional facts and you can just go, okay, facts are this person, and watch the documentaries that go more into the psychological issues of it, this would be a good one to start with because you're not hearing the gore, you're not hearing the violence, you're not hearing how they were tortured or anything like that. That's what I can't toe into that. So if you're interested, I think this might be a good one to start with because again, it's really just the psychological events of all these characters rather than the gore. So,
and another psychological event that you would probably like would be the Aaron Hernandez. That one is
I love that
the football player.
Yes.
Yeah, that one was really good.
That one and the girlfriend of Madeline just got now. I see the sun. There's all those angels singing.
Right, I hear them. I see them.
I'm like, wow. Let me set this up. Okay, it doesn't matter. Anyway, the girlfriend, what was in Florida, and she had killed her boyfriend and stabbed him like 45 times.
The TLC girl.
He ran into that knife 45 times.
I've watched her documentary. No. She had blonde hair, and then she had glasses and dark brown hair in the all the documentaries.
Oh,
this
monster!
Is recent, like 10 years ago. I'll figure out the name. I'll figure out
so many coming through mine. So anyway. CPJ, thanks so much for coming on. Producer, thank you so much. And guys, remember, we still have the Pineapple Project going on. So get out your Venmos if you haven't already. And also, Miss CPJ, how many do you have left? Oh, we are auctioning off this awesome cutting board.
For you. I've got 7, I think, ornaments left. I will make room for more ornaments if we go beyond the 10.
Okay, awesome. So look at this, guys. You guys need this. Oh my gosh, y'all. Julie Cribbs, thank you so much for listening.
What up, Julie?
Oh, hope you're well. And so anyway, we're auctioning this off for the Pineapple Project. Remember, the deadline is December the 21st. And I'm going to put together really quickly this little basket. I just kind of half-ass things sometimes. I'm going to half-ass put this basket together. You guys are going to love it. It's all of my favorite things. And so I think my favorite things are your favorite things too. And maybe,
I'm sorry, that was so
so anyway,
funny.
to help our kiddos out, it is, oh yes, and that's another auction item that's going to come up too, guys. This was done by our viewer over on the Social Undistancing show.
Yep.
So you guys, we're gonna get a bid on this as well. So I need to get it together because my train of thoughts is just, I didn't write any of this down, so now I'm like all over the place.
That's okay. That's okay. So if anybody wants to, that's here and you'd like to support Christmas is for Kids and help the CPS here in Lubbock, if you'd like to donate $10 right now to the Pineapple Project Venmo, you qualify for a free ornament that can have your family's names listed, your kids' names listed, your grandkids' names listed, your fur babies. It can be a memorial ornament like the ones I've got behind me. It can be your family photo that you got taken this spring, whatever. They're cute. They're awesome. Jaime's got one that I did for him last night because he donated $10. So if you,
I just never told you that I did it.
oh, okay, I'll get you one, girl.
We're down to 6.
Okay, so we're down to
I want to
6
show
now.
mine. I want to show mine.
So y'all seriously, get your
Look at this, guys.
$10 in and you get this ornament.
Oh, I love it. That is
So
so
got
awesome.
buffalo
This
plaid
is-
trees.
This
all
is
that.
what Carrie did for me. So Eli's the name of my son. So these are all people who aren't in our family anymore. Eli's the name of my son. Artens is my wife's grandmother. Otilia is my grandmother. William is my father-in-law. Arturo is my uncle, and Hector is my uncle too. And I asked her if she could put a pineapple. Look how beautiful that pineapple is right there. And all of my family's, our loved ones gone. This really just makes my. Yeah, I'm gonna stop because it's. So
Yes,
sweet.
no,
Thank you,
it's
Carrie,
so
okay?
emotional. I'm
It
sure.
really is. It's so beautiful though. So
It is. It's such a personal
thank you.
thing. And I
So
was telling
guys-
him last night, yeah. How
so
beautiful
guys,
that
just go to open it up and put the money in there, and it's going for a good cause. And it's look how beautiful these things are. Like they're really super sweet, man.
So
So
help us guys have
Yeah.
our kiddos in foster care. Help us give them a beautiful Christmas. Oh, I love that plaid. It's awesome.
Yeah, see, there's
So-
lots of places.
Joanne just said, I want to contribute to the cause, but someone is going to have to come pick up a check or cash because she doesn't do Venmo. Joanne, we're going to
got you
get the
covered.
elves to meet you, okay?
Send me
And
your
maybe-
address, Joanne, and I'll make sure someone can go arrange to pick up from you. Okay.
I've got to run to town, girl. I got to
I
run
know.
to town today. So if you want me to come do it today, Joanne, send him your address and we can meet in person for the first time.
I know I have to leave Pflugerville here in just a minute to go to town. Anyway, guys, thank y'all so much. Help us make a Christmas is for Kids, the Pineapple Project, a
Yes.
success this year. We most certainly appreciate all those that have donated, all those that ran and got your awesome shirts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Remember, guys, let's keep talking sheet. Y'all have a good one.
Y'all.
Bye. CPJ, thanks.
Keep saying
Hey, you
bye one
bet.
more time.
I know. Hold on. Keep waiting
Love y'all.
because he can't find our goodbyes.
I got it.